What's up, folks? Welcome to the Mash and Drum Whiskey Room. It is Thursday night, another Mash and Journey single barrel selection. We are really excited to have you guys here hanging out tonight. So if you, let me turn that off. If we, as you see here, next to me, right over this way, my partner in crime, Scott the Hawk from My Bourbon Journey. How you doing, Scotty?
Good, brother. Good, brother. Glad to be here again. Chris, thanks for setting this up for us. Appreciate it.
Yep. And right down here, right below me, is Will and Sarah, the lovely dynamic duo of the Whiskey Crusaders. We're still waiting on Matt. He was drinking Stag Junior all day. We'll see how that goes. But we have Will and Sarah. Yeah, thanks for coming on, guys. You guys excited to try some Westland?
Oh, hell yeah.
Absolutely. It's been a favorite of ours for a long time. We've really enjoyed a lot of products out of Westland. So looking forward to picking through these with you.
And then our special guest tonight is Chris. Is it Reisback or Reisback?
Reisback's good, but honestly, I've been called a heck of a lot worse.
All right, Chris Reisback is here from he's from Westland. He's going to be kind of talking about what we have in our glasses tonight that we're going to be selecting for the Mash and Journey Whiskey Club, and also tell us a little bit about the distillery itself, what's happening at Westland. What I'm interested in is where they really see the future of the American single malt in the United States, and how he thinks that's growing, where it's going. So this way we could kind of make this pretty entertaining for you guys we have three very extremely different casks here to choose from. So it's going to be a very interesting selection. You might see three here, but all three have extremely different components in each glass. So this will be an interesting selection for us. So Chris, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do at Westland and about Westland overall?
Yeah. Well, first, let me say, always a treat to get to do stuff like this. You know, I'm the guy that helps put together the assortment of what we sell for single casks. I'm rarely the guy that gets to help make the actual selection. I'm sort of the whiskey fairy godfather, I guess. We're just sort of like dropping little boxes of whiskey everywhere. But yeah, I'm Chris Reisback. I'm the vice president of commercial sales at Westland Distillery. I've been here for a little over 5 years now. Not obviously one of the founders or anything like that. That's Matt Hoffman, our co-founder and master distiller. But I've been here long enough that I think I can lay some claim that I'm pretty OG crew or pre-acquisition. So we're a good team. Obviously, distillery became a part of Remy Cointreau, the French parent company, back in 2017, but we've kept the entire team on board. So it's still the good old Westland bunch there at the distillery, but it's been pretty exciting. We're in this really interesting moment. It's funny to hear you guys talk about like, oh, you know, what's going on with American single malt, and actually your timing couldn't be really any better. So at Westland, we exclusively produce American single malt whiskey, 100%. Unlike a lot of distilleries in America, now there's effectively a little over or nearly 200 distilleries now in the States making single malt, but a majority of them, it's a tertiary product, right? You know, we make bourbon, we make rye, we make vodka, we make gin, or any assortment of things. And, you know, it's, hey, we want to kind of expand and let's make some single malt whiskey as well. You know, since 2010, we've exclusively been making American single malt. We're out in the Pacific Northwest in Seattle, Washington. You know, one of the big things for us was how do we make a whiskey that draws its inspiration from where it's from? You know, we have an obligation, I think, to create a whiskey that has a real sense of place. I think, you know, the French will use the term terroir, or you'll hear the term provenance thrown around a lot. And I know there's this kind of really interesting, I don't know, I want to say it's an argument, but a narrative out there about what's the difference between terroir and provenance. But, you know, for us, terroir is this idea of like, it's not just the agriculture of the region. That certainly plays a huge role in what we do at West, and I'll talk about that quickly. But, you know, it's also just the culture of the place. We've got this fantastic brewing culture and winemaking culture all across the Pacific Northwest. And it's probably hard to imagine what your life would be, a modern life would be, without companies out of the, you know, Pacific Northwest, Boeing, Microsoft, Amazon, Starbucks. I mean, these are companies that have had a massive sort of sea change impact on the world broadly. So I think what we look at as our place in the Northwest is to push the boundaries of single malt whiskey. It's, you know, how do we expand upon what is something that's really classically understood to be a single distillery, 100% malted barley? How do we take that and put a unique spin on it? One where it doesn't feel like you're trying to dress up in someone else's kilt, if you'll have the expression. But you know, how do we do something that is genuinely an American single malt. And I think what we did is we kind of looked back and we said, well, we've got this great adjacent industry in the brewing industry here in the Pacific Northwest that makes a ton of like excellent beers. And, if you talk to any brewer on the planet, brewer's going to tell you almost immediately, like, if you want to make different types of beer, you need to have different types of barley involved in it. And while that might not necessarily speak to the varietal of the barley or the variety of the barley, it absolutely speaks to the kilning and roasting levels. So one of the things that I would argue it's certainly one of the first things people tend to think about us is our use of what we refer to as a 5 malt recipe. So it's our Washington State grown pale malt, 2-row pale malt with 4 specialty malts. Munich malt, which is a very light kiln. Briess Extra Special, which is actually coming out of Wisconsin, which is sort of a modified or mixed roast level. Then we've got pale chocolate and brown malt. So those things, if you were to take what our mash condition is for a majority of our whiskeys, and you were to give it to a brewer, you'd end up with sort of a bit of a brown ale stout kind of thing going on. But if you talk to whiskey distillers really throughout the rest of the world, they're pretty consistent in their approach, which is like, hey, we want to make our distillate as inexpensively as possible because we want our barrels and time to sort of give our whiskey profile. And at Westland, our mission, our belief is firmly in this sort of idea of, well, how do we celebrate the raw materials, all of them? How do we celebrate yeast? How do we celebrate barley? How do we celebrate oak? How do we celebrate the water? And, I think for a lot of places you'll talk to them, they'll say, oh, it's our water special or our barrels are special. The reality is you can only change that so much, but where people tend to just sort of glaze over it and they go, well, you just got to make alcohol. Fermentation makes alcohol. We look at that and we say, no, that's where flavor comes from, quite literally. So the foundation of all the Westland whiskeys is purely built into this. How do we take barley as a raw material, utilize a unique strain of yeast and the fact that we use a Belgian Saison yeast, and what are the flavors we can capture from that? And then how do we further define those through the distillation process?
Okay. So how would you, if you were to explain, the main difference between what we would get out of Scotland compared to what we're getting out of Westland? There's probably a lot of differences, but if you can kind of pick out 1 or 2 main ones, what would that be? Yeah.
So Westland, obviously the use of the 5 malt barley bill versus a standard sort of pale malt mash. So assume that a majority of the whiskey, the single malt whiskey that comes out of Scotland, if you were to take it, instead of distilling it and you were going to add hops and make a beer out of it, you'd end up with a pale ale effectively for most of them. Whereas with Westland, you're ending up with more of that brown ale stout. So a lot of those flavors are transferable and make its way through the distilling process. The other thing I would say is that there's less of a focus on long-term maturation. Long-term maturation tends to be the result of the type of distillate you produce and the style of barrel that you're using. When you think classically about Scottish distilleries, you're using a lot of second fill bourbon or ex-bourbon barrels, a lot of ex-sherry casks, so barrels that have had some use to them prior. Whereas at Westland, we tend to prefer using air-dried New White American Oak as our first fill. Obviously, today there's a couple of unique examples of that mixed in, but I think what you'll find is that because we don't mature our whiskeys nearly as long, there's a better interplay between oak notes and barley notes versus one thing sort of dominating the entirety of the palate or the aromas.
Awesome. All right. Well, tonight we have 3 very distinct and different single malts we're going to be trying. Oh, not single malts. I'm sorry. Just American single malt. Can you?
Yep.
Even though it's a 5 malt, can you call it a single malt?
Yeah, so this is kind of the misnomer, and I think about this a lot because 5 malt, when we say it, it's purely discussing the number of different types of barley used in our mash condition for our standard, flagship expression, or formerly American oak. Whereas, like when you say single malt, you're literally delineating a single distillery, 100% malted barley. And actually, you were kind of mentioning this earlier, but one of the big things about setting up the American Single Malt Whiskey Commission was this idea of, hey, we need to create a standard of identity because effectively right now, American Single Malt Whiskey doesn't mean anything to the United States federal government. It is, even if you look at a bottle of Westland, if anyone's got a bottle of Westland at home or you've got one on your shelf, you'll notice that the words American Single Malt and whiskey don't appear on the same line because according to the TTB, we register that as just whiskey under the most generic sense. We are hoping that as of November this year, the federal government it looks like it's moving forward. They are going to approve the definition that we set forward as part of the American Single Malt Commission. So back in 2016, we grabbed about 7 or 8 other distilleries in a basement of Binny's after Whiskey Fest, and we literally wrote the standard of identity. It's quite basic, right? Single distillery, 100% malted barley, has to be matured in oak cask, but no specificity to new oak or used oak, just oak broadly.
Okay.
It can't be distilled to no higher than 80% alcohol, can't be bottled any less than 40% alcohol, but no specificity to region, state, any of those things, and no specificity to an age statement. Because at the end of the day, and I think we were talking about this sort of in the green room prior, but the reality is the American consumer is smarter, more financially prudent with buying whiskey than they've ever been before. They know what's going on. Like I laugh all the time. People are like, "Oh, do you think we could put this out?" I was like, if you're unsure, chances are probably no. So, you better bring your A game when you're releasing whiskey in the marketplace now, because the reality is that for American single malt distillers, we have a responsibility as some of I'll refer to Westland as sort of OG American single malt producers. We have a responsibility to putting out something that's going to bring people into the category broadly. And you look at the growth, we've gone from 8, co-signers of the commission to nearly 200 producers today. It's clear that there's a groundswell of enthusiasm across this country for American single malt whiskey.
And that's huge for you guys to get that set up. Essentially, look at all the other whiskey categories that have been defined. Now you've got essentially the American single malt, definition. Now everybody can kind of follow suit, which is nice. So,
we've been talking about this for the last 2 or 3 years. That once we started seeing American single malts hit the market, will there ever be a definition coming from the government for what American single malt is and what it should be? And I will say, and I'd like to get the Whiskey Crusaders thoughts on this. I actually really like the fact that you didn't. Oh, Bacon Kitty's here. One of them. I didn't. I like the fact that you kind of left the cask part of it a little bit vague, because I feel like it leaves more room for innovation on your part. So I just want to get. So let's say, like, Will and Sarah, what are your thoughts on that?
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
The fact that you should be able to use used oak, just because it is primarily across the world, when you're looking at distilleries that are putting out malt whiskeys, most of them are using used oak. So the fact that you're leaving the interpretation open to that is really, really fantastic. I'm really happy to hear that. Yeah.
I'm just glad they're finally put some definition to it.
Right.
So.
Yeah,
it's funny you say that, and honestly, as much as you want to create things like that, you want to create standards of identity for positive momentum forward, right? We want to give consumers transparency. This is what you should expect. Listen, it's a new category. Malt whiskey is by definition, single malt whiskey is more expensive than bourbon and rye. When we look at dry goods costing, just to give you a sense of this, because I think we tend to look at bourbon and go, God, it's so nice. I'm not sure now is the moment to be saying this, but it's relatively inexpensive comparatively when you can find it at SRP. But it's cheaper. But if you look at the price of number 2 yellow Dan corn in commodity levels versus really the entry point of barley, which is, let's call it number 2, or excuse me, 2-row, pale malt, you're looking at anywhere from a 5 to 6x premium. So 7 cents for corn, 35 cents for barley at silo quantity. So imagine
nobody's
raw
growing,
good.
And then nobody's growing the grains that you guys are using, so they're charging even more for the 6 rows and for things like that. So
yep, that's exactly it. So you have to. I think one of the things that we need to do as an industry is we really need to get consumers broadly aware of what does whiskey actually cost, because I think what you're seeing is, if you're using the largest producers as an indication, the reality is the economies of scale benefit that they see is so far beyond what a new American distillery, forget if it's single malt or barley, or bourbon or rye. The reality is you're looking at just a completely different financial metric in terms of how to bring that whiskey to market. So, what you don't want to do is see people crazy subsidizing things only to then realize there's no way to make money doing this and then close. You also don't want to see people pricing things so high that they can't get people to sort of come in. So I think at Westland, we've identified this sort of perfect little niche for ourselves. Listen, there's no doubt about it. We are a premium whiskey product. I make no bones about it. Everything that we do is done to the nth degree. We put thoughtfulness into every single decision, whether that's the packaging that we do, It's the type of barley that we use, the fermentation styles that we want to achieve. Those things are all very much intentional. It's not, it's not like, oh, well, yeah, we're just going to kind of do what the guy down the road is. That's not even remotely what we want to do. We want to create a whiskey that really differentiates what American single malt can be, and then certainly goes, this is classic Westland. This is house profile Westland. And what I mean, not to get crazy down the rabbit hole here, but one of the reasons I'm so excited about your cask selections today in particular is I would argue you have a barrel within this very specifically that is quintessential house profile Westland.
I agree with that statement, Steve.
Yep, I would agree too. All right, so, well, I really hope that does happen this November. I think that would be a huge win for the for American Single Malt and the American Single Malt distilleries all across the country. Chris, just remind us where exactly is Westland located?
Yeah, so we're in Seattle, Washington, in the Soto part of town, so just south of the old Kingdome baseball stadium. So we're in a fairly industrial part of town, but we've got an active tasting room. We're not doing tours currently on site at the distillery, but you can still come in Tuesday through Sunday. We open about noon. I want to say we close about 7-ish, right in that neck of the woods. But yeah, it's great. We have an excellent tasting room, fantastic staff there. We do some distillery only single cask, and occasionally we'll release fun little treats that are at distillery only. But broadly, we're still trying to make our whiskey accessible around the country.
Awesome. All right, so Westland was kind enough to send us these cool little tasting kits here. They came with we have some cards. I came getting some like a lot of noise here from one of you guys.
Sorry.
There's like a humming. Is that you guys?
Might be.
I can hear it. I have my fan on. I'm happy to turn it off if need be.
No, I'm not hearing that. It's Will and Sarah, I think.
Is it?
Yeah. There's like a humming going on in your background. I'm not sure what that is.
My AC just kicked on.
Oh, that's it.
That's what it is. That's what it is. That's what it is.
We're in Texas, guys. It's got to come on like every 10 minutes.
Yeah. You just got to, you two just got to sweat this one out, okay?
All right. So we got all these cards here that came with what's going to be in each cask. So we're going to start with cask 901.
I'm telling you, I love the proof on this thing.
Yeah. So cask 901 is a 5 malt. The cooperage is from Independent Stave. Fill date of 12/5/13. So this has some nice age on it, Chris,
Sure
right?
does. Yeah.
This is an older whiskey. Yeah, absolutely. So anytime you see a pre-4-digit number barrel from us, you're talking about stuff that realistically was made prior to February or March of 2014. So this is older whiskey. Admittedly, all of your single casks are on the older side, which is kind of fun. But this one in particular... This is New American Oak first fill, which is so basically we got like a brand new bourbon barrel, which is awesome. Not even. This is literally it. This would be the second time that we filled an air dried Westland barrel. So what's kind of wild about this is that this would be this is going to be some of our. I believe this was a Cooper's. Yeah, this is a Cooper's Reserve barrel. So this is going to be their 24-month air dry, number 1 char, and a heavy toast on this.
Proof on this one, guys, 123.14. Yowza.
Like when you're nosing it, even when you're nosing it, you don't get that ethanol. I mean, I've had mine open for a little bit, but you don't get that burn like you would on a bourbon or something else, I'll tell you.
No, I can cram my nose all the way in there and it's not burning.
I'm getting all chocolate covered berries on this.
Yep.
Yeah,
Same
I got chocolate, I got peaches and berries.
Yeah, it's very that fruity kind of note, that peach and all of that.
Behind that though, there's some tobacco and leather, raisin.
Definitely get raisin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice honey notes on it.
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of honey and dates.
Maybe even like a honey graham cracker, like a cereal, something like that.
Ooh.
Got some coffee bean in there.
Yeah, definitely.
I'll tell you, your tasting notes are right on. I'm looking at Shane, our blender, our master blender's notes, because he goes through all these as well. So on the nose, he's got Saison, milk chocolate, hay, pancakes, blueberry, and vanilla frosting. On the palate, we see spice, fudge, toasted wheat, and strawberry candy. So your notes are pretty close.
Ooh,
I can
blueberry.
even see, like, without even tasting it so far, you can really pick up that strawberry, that berry kind of note to it.
Yep,
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, this is like all sorts of just like summer berries and stone fruits, but yeah, it's kind of wrapped around though, like yeah,
All-
right. Oh, you got the tobacco, the coffee bean, all that
All
stuff,
covered in chocolate.
all covered in chocolate.
It's like a summer
See,
dream.
I love the mulchy, mossy hay.
The green
aspect.
note to
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
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 Can I go in? Are
This-
we ready for that? Are we gonna?
Yeah,
yeah.
let's try this.
Yeah.
Cheers,
Okay.
guys! Thanks for hanging out.
Oh, come on.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh yeah, that is. That's all like chocolate, coffee,
Yeah.
fudge. I definitely get the fudge. Holy
Yeah.
crap!
I love
It's
the
kinda-
I love that leather note. There's that nice
Mhm.
like leather, like a slight dryness that's there to it. But man, that is, and again that peach. Like I don't know if it's in my mind because Will said
No,
it, but it's
there's
very
peach.
peachy.
There's
Mhm.
very peachy. It's got a slight effervescence to it,
Yeah,
almost like a champagne
Mhm.
feel
Yeah,
on the
good
palate.
call.
I
Yeah.
like it a lot.
Absolutely.
So Chris, tell us a little bit more about the cask for this one. This is like you said. This is a Westland season cask.
Yeah, so this would have been, and what I kind of wanted to point out, and this is what's so kind of wild, is first fills at Westland were 2010. So the reality is that by the time we got into the new facility, this would have been quite literally, this could have been one of the very first barrels that we ever filled at Westland. I don't know that 100%. We don't keep that level of provenance sort of record for barrel, but the reality is just by the math, the whiskeys that we were putting out originally were between 2 and 3 years. This would have had to have been in that first or second year of production for it to have qualified for this, which is, to me, that's what's sort of fascinating about this. I mean, this is quite literally one of the sort of artifacts of Westland, which, to be a 10-year-old distillery, and we just passed our 10-year history in 10 year of commercial production in June of this year, to know that those barrels are still sort of incorporated and have a life beyond sort of becoming like, a planter box at a neighbor's house sort of thing. Like, I love that. I love that you're able to see, and it's interesting here, especially leather is the flavor that I heard someone say. Like, to me, when we start using more of our second fill casks, I get this really interesting, like it reminds me of like the smell of like a horse saddle. There's this sort of like barnyardy, earthy thing that I absolutely love, because to me it shows a spirit that's developed some depth and character. Though that's a flavor that that jumps out to you right at the beginning, I'm not sure that I would look at it as a positive, but when you've got an older spirit, you start to get some of that like rancio, nuanced quality. That's a great sign for me.
Yeah, I'm loving the blend of that like leather saddle mixed with the peach. And one thing that's very specific, there's a chocolate shop that I used to go to in New York. Right there in Queens.
Here comes the inner fat kid.
That's right. Here comes the inner fat kid. They had this chocolate truffle that had like pepper and allspice in it, and that's what I'm getting reminded of in here, which is such a weird place to be taken to. Like all of a sudden, I'm back in Queens eating that chocolate.
Here would be my my thought process coming from like a non like Scotch person or whatever. But I'm curious as to why people who would drink like a lot of scotches wouldn't want more of these higher proof scotches in terms of like where this is. Cause like this, and not to say you don't want it, but it's so often seems like they're so low in proof or percentage.
I can explain a little bit of why that is. In Scotland, because of the climate, a lot of the time they lose alcohol instead of lose water out of their barrels.
Okay.
So in a hotter climate like Kentucky and in Texas especially, the alcohol evaporates first out of the barrel. But in a cooler climate, in a climate that has a lot of moisture in the air already, like Scotland does, you evaporate alcohol out of the barrel instead of evaporating water.
Okay, interesting.
So they're literally losing proof the longer it's in the barrel. There are lots of barrels over there that they have to sell them at this point, because if they leave it in another year, it's going to drop to 39%, and they can't sell it as whiskey.
Okay, interesting. Okay.
So
this is kind of a funny thing about Westland in that this barrel was the entry proof on this would have been 62.5. So anytime that we fill second fill cooperage. So anytime if the barrel's been a sherry cask or an ex-bourbon barrel or on second fill, the new make spirit that enters those barrels are at 62.5. So this is kind of wild in the fact that I can almost guarantee you, if I were to look at the barrel register very long term here, the fact that this is bottled at 123.14 means that this would have been in Hoquiam in our barrel house for some time. But I can almost guarantee you that it started its life as a barrel that we actually had in the tasting room as part of our sort of like tour area, because it's temperature controlled. So what you'll see, and this is kind of wild, those barrels tend to go up in proof, like you're describing what you'll see in those warm climates, because obviously it's a much drier environment. So you'll lose quite a bit more water out of those casks, comparatively speaking. But for this one, when it goes down to Hoquiam, the exact opposite process starts. So you'll start to degrade ethanol at a faster rate than you will lose water, because we have a climate in the Pacific Northwest almost incredibly consistent with what you would see out of like the middle to upper parts of Scotland.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Not so much this year. It's been incredibly warm, but historically speaking, that's more kind of classic to what we see.
So to answer your question, we want higher proof scotches, and they would love to give us higher proof scotches, but honestly, they can't necessarily.
Yeah, and that was the thing. I wasn't even saying like to that you don't not want it. I'm just saying it seems like so many scotches are in that like between like, I don't know, let's just say 80 and 100 proof, like just from like, holy cow. Then you get something like this and you're like, well, shit, man, this is really where it's at. Why would you monkey around with some of that other stuff? So
yeah, if malt can taste like this, why don't you sell, your scotch to taste like this?
Yeah.
I'm absolutely loving the proof on this one.
I do too. I'm loving everything about
I'm
this
loving
one.
everything about this
So
one.
real quick, I want to thank all the patrons for both myself and Scott for coming in, hanging out tonight.
Definitely.
Todd Ritter, Eric Thompson, Jimmy Jack, Mike Meyer, a bunch of you. Also, Donald Rant's in the house. He's really into the American single malts as well. We have Ethan Turkis here. Jason Busey dropping a super chat, very simply just saying moist. Thank you so much for that.
Dirty word.
And we want to welcome in. How you doing, Matt? What's up, Whiskey Crusader Matt?
I'm good. I was at another tasting. I'm sorry. I had to do a very important thing prior to this, and they had being scheduled on the same day. It's like, son of a bitch, I got to do both of these. It's terrible.
How was that Stag Junior tasting?
Oh my god, dude, it was fucking amazing. It blew every other batch I've ever had away. It was just unbelievable.
So was this a local pick?
Yeah, it was a local pick by the Dallas Bourbon Society.
Nice. Real big shout out to Perry from This Is My Bourbon podcast. He recently just went over 1,000 subs. Congrats again. Congrats again to you, Perry. That's always a big milestone, buddy. We'll definitely got to have you on soon. We're gonna do something fun, so I'll definitely connect with you on that. Bourbon is here. What's up? Hey, Swan is here, the Bourbon Finder. You could actually find Swan also on This Is My Bourbon podcast, hanging out with Perry. Westland is awesome. Cask 2632 is beautiful. Glad I flew out to Seattle last week. I'll get that tour next time. There you go. Tom Flanagan and Silver Lock Whiskey Reviews in the house. Awesome. So Matt, I don't know if you've dove in just yet. We started with Cask 901.
Okay.
And the body on this guy is just absolutely phenomenal.
Fantastic.
There's this umami, salty, savory note that comes along with the sweetness.
But then it's got this peach cobbler with like creamy vanilla.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's just
I like Sarah's notes more. I like those. That sounds good. That sounds good. I like the peach cobbler, all that other stuff.
Yeah,
like Will's like, this stuff tastes like funky, dirty earth. I'm like, oh, no.
Yeah. Scott thinks umami is a naughty Japanese porn.
Oh, umami.
Hey, Scott can't help it. Japanese porn. What can you say?
Umami. She really pissed me off the other day. That umami. She's good.
Oh man, I'm flipping out over 901.
I'm already sold. We'll take barrel 901.
So I will say this to me is, I was saying earlier, one of these is sort of quintessential middle-aged. Like this is that example. I'm not sure we can give you better examples of like if someone said to me, write me a love story to Westland, like this is the elements of it. Like this is what it's all about. Like this to me carries all of those things that we're so excited about Westland. It's the type of whiskey we've been making for a while. This whiskey to get it with this little bit of time on it. Obviously this is what roughly speaking an 8. Yeah, God, Jesus, it's an 8 year,
it's
an 8 year, 2 month.
It's such an interesting blend of like summer fruits and like these deep, rich chocolate tobacco spicy flavor. Matt, I know you like to rattle off about 100 tastings. Yeah. What are you getting on this one?
Yeah, let us know. And Jace,
blueberry is the first thing I pick up.
Oh, blueberry, hey?
Cream, a little bit of lime, lemon, grapefruit, pie crust, a little like bran muffins.
Bran muffins.
Cereal note.
Yeah, totally.
Toasted oak.
I think he means the ones that like keep you regular too.
Yeah, the good ones.
I'm pretty sure.
Whiskey will help keep you regular.
Yeah. Austin says Sarah's notes knocked it out of the park. Yeah. Sarah kind of nailed it. Hey, what's up, Kira? Kira's here from Shelf Turds. Hope you guys are getting back to it.
Cotton candy, spun sugar.
Yeah, there's definitely a sweet sugary note to it, like on top of all that chocolate, and oh man, it's all over the place.
But it's not overly sweet.
Yeah, it's not over. No. There's enough of the tobacco and the spice and the chocolate to balance that all out.
Yeah,
I agree.
And I think that proof really kicks in too, where it helps to offset some of those things as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. It smells really
nice. You
nice.
guys can drink the other ones. I'm just gonna drink this one.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so Matt, let us know what you think of that on the palate. We're gonna start getting ready for number 5699.
So good.
Now this is an interesting one, guys. So we said all three of these are different. Matt, what do you think of that one on the palate?
Ooh, wow, that's a fruit bomb.
Yeah. Right.
Holy crap! It's super oily.
Let's do it.
Wow, it's like peaches and cream, like oatmeal.
Yeah, like
Totally. Yeah,
lots of whipped cream on that.
Yeah, I mean, Sarah called out peach cobbler was like a perfect note.
Yeah.
All right. So next up is 5699. So this is again, we're going with that 5 malt. Cooperage says Rocky Mountain. Original cask is ISC Cooper's Reserve. We'll ask Chris about this a little bit. Cask type though. Ready for this, guys? Cask type is a tequila cask.
Woo!
Oh.
The proof on this one comes in a little lower at 105.22 on this one. The harvest date was 2/22/21. Finish date 7/18/18. So, Chris, tell us a little bit about the journey of this particular maturation and cask and finish and how this worked.
Yeah, this is where when about a year ago when I started looking at like how do we want to evolve our single barrel program, one of the things that we said was, all right, let's start really looking at how do we get people to see that single malt can really stand up to quite a bit of different barrel types. So obviously we had some of these tequila barrels, we've had some maple casks, we've had some rum barrels, Banyuls, Madeira, Amarone, all sorts of really fun things. Got loads of stuff that's held beer prior, but we wanted to showcase people that you can pull flavors from these types of barrels, but at the same time use them to be complementary to the existing sort of malt and certainly fermentation flavors that we get through our standard run. So you said it first, but yeah, this is our standard 5 malt run. So again, Washington State Pale base with the 4 specialty roasted and kiln malts. Started in an ISC Cooper's Reserve. So again, just like 901, that's that 24-month air dry, number 1 char, heavy toast to it, except this would have been the first time that cask was filled. So it was virgin air dried new white oak when that came through. And that got filled back on July 29th of 2014. But then on July 18th of 2018, so effectively almost exactly 4 years to the day, this got transferred into an ex-tequila cask that we sourced from Rocky Mountain Cooperage out in Denver. So Rocky Mountain Cooperage, when we buy these, I should point out, they're not saying like, hey, this is who the tequila producer is. Sometimes they'll come to you with the barrel markings on it. Like, it's always pretty easy to figure out when you've got like Old Buffalo Trace barrels or Heaven Hills or Four Roses. Like, the stencils are still on those. It's pretty easy to find them. But on these tequila ones, they're not marked nearly as well. And it's interesting. The barrels come in a little bit of a different condition. So these have obviously come up to Rocky Mountain Cooperage. They've been broken down on the shipment, and then they're rebuilt What I love about this one, what I think makes this such a cool barrel is, one, it was filled at that 55. So anytime we're filling new cooperage, we're filling at 55% ABV. So if you talk to anyone that really has, I think, an affinity for some of those old Dusties, one of the things that they, aside from the fact that it's just cool to have old stuff, and drink some of that, one of the things they'll tell you is that barrel entry proof shifted pretty dramatically a number of years ago. So, a lot of bourbon producers used to fill at 55, and now majority of that stuff coming in at 62.5. And what you find with that is that, it's great for yield, but it does absolutely change the flavor and the way that the distillate interacts with the wood. So you tend to draw a lot of less tannin out of cask with lower entry proof. So here you're getting a lot more of that oak lactone, wood sugar, a lot more of those creamy, sweeter flavors from that first fill. What I tend to really love about tequila casks is, though, you get a really interesting vegetal note to it. And I think if you use the term vegetal for a lot of things, people assume it to be a bad one. But to me, there is a very specific aromatic note on this whiskey that strikes me as tequila, but in such a fun way. And has everyone knows it? So I'm not presupposing anything. Everyone's got it, knows it.
Vegetal was the first thing I picked up.
I'm not getting my typical tequila, but I'm getting this matchstick.
Like a used matchstick.
Yeah, like you just striked it and blew it out.
And blew it out.
This thing is this is like smelling like a smoked old fashioned.
Yeah. It's very smoky on the nose.
You guys are doing excellent work here because, and this is the super cool thing, one of the things that we rarely see, because obviously these barrels tend to get added into the bigger things, but this would have been first run 5 malt post a peated run. So effectively what you've got is there could have been a residual amount of sort of phenolic aromatics here that you'd get some of that. So that matchstick quality that tends to be a very consistent sort of flavor. So think about it. So, obviously when you're doing your second distillation, right, you're pulling your heads and tails. So the heads and tails of prior run here would have been peated with a 5 malt spirit run. So it's not obviously a mountain of it, but you're certainly getting enough where you're going to get some of that flavor coming through. So it's technically a 5 malt run because it's 5 malt distillate as your primary, but you are getting some heads and tails obviously then that are going into the spirit run here with that 5 malt. So that matchstick thing is such a good pick.
I want to say hi real quick to Abby who inks. Thanks for coming in. Scott Pigsley, one of the winners last night. Thanks for chiming in. Eric Evanson is here. What's going on, buddy?
What up, Eric?
Yeah, it really reminds me of just camping in general.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of a toasted marshmallow note, but when I open this up, I'm also getting a Jolly Rancher note in here.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone getting that? I get
a little bit of a cherry.
I don't know what the flavor is, but I'm getting a sweet, tarty Jolly Rancher thing going on.
All right, I'm gonna hit you with my namesake right now because that's partially what I'm getting.
What, you getting the hock? You getting the smoke?
Yeah, I'm getting that smoked meat.
Yeah,
the smoked meat.
I'm getting the
when
I
tasted
the smoked the ham hock.
Tobacco and leather.
And this one
I
actually
tasted
had
through these a couple of weeks ago. One of the things that I picked up on here was it reminded me of the rind of a watermelon, the very last bite where there's just a thin layer of the sweetness still before you get into some of the white or the pith, I guess what you'd call it. I just love that because it's not overly sweet. There's definitely a fruit note, but it's not overpowering.
That's my favorite part of the watermelon, down towards the end, towards the rind when it gets a little.
Yeah, I can totally get that.
That's a good call. That's a good call because when you said watermelon and a Jolly Rancher, it's maybe that.
Yeah, it's watermelon Jolly Rancher. Smoked.
Top Shelf does, and I hope you got the most PD Pete bomb for Sarah.
Love you too, Dustin.
So do I.
Yeah, I get the watermelon now that you mentioned it, but I also got an orange and a honey in the background there. Tobacco and leather and wood.
See, and I don't get my typical coffee note that I.
It does. It's got this fresh.
Coffee?
I didn't.
It's got that fresh cut wood note on the very back end.
Yeah.
You just ran a saw through it.
Yeah.
Yep.
I typically get a coffee note with Westland. I don't find that in this one as much. I am getting more of a black tea.
Oh yeah, I guess I can see that.
Yeah,
I think that's actually a really fair call. There is certainly less of what I would describe as a classic, ground coffee note here for sure.
Yeah, You guys have a wonderful fingerprint. Just your standard line. Just all of them have this distinct note in there that's just very recognizably Westland, and I love it when distilleries have that.
Yeah, and as you were talking about how it came after a peated run, it's all smoke. You don't get the actual peat flavor on like you would with an actual peated run. But it's just all the smoke, and I like the smoke.
I get overcooked chocolate chip pancake.
Yum.
Ooh.
Like you left the chocolate chip pancake on the pan a little too much.
Yeah.
And it's starting to maybe get a little bit burnt, but you still get the sweetness.
Yeah.
I'm still getting that fake chocolate, but the watermelon,
like a roastiness to it.
Yeah, the watermelon thing, and maybe that's what it's kind of exchanging for the coffee note that you're used to, Will, a little bit.
Could be.
Mm-hmm.
Matt, what are you getting, bud?
I get a sulfuric watermelon. Like it's and a lot of vegetal. To me, this is like camping with but it's also raining at the same time.
Oh
with
yeah,
a lot of earth and like mud. I mean, I almost picture like Jurassic Park with the T-Rex, that kind of camping. That's what's going on.
Well,
here.
I mean, it's not camping unless there's a T-Rex there.
Exactly.
These are fantastic tasting notes. This is just great. Like,
I mean, if you're camping and you're not getting attacked by a T-Rex, that's what kind of camping is that?
I mean, you're gonna go in for the kill. You got at least get a T-Rex trophy.
Yeah,
I was talking to one of the guys in the distillery, and I was like, man, it would be just great to take all these, like, 'cause we're doing a bunch of these, right, for people to do their cask selections, and the tasting notes are awesome because tasting notes are so personalized, right?
Yeah.
Listen, there's inalienable things where you go, oh yeah, there's definitely X, Y, or Z going on there, but there's also stuff where it's like, no, there's this great memory, and I was saying to him, like, man, it would just be awesome if we could just like put together. He definitely is way beyond what we could afford, but like just get Jeremy Irons to come to the distillery one day and be like, Jeremy Irons, just like read these back to us. Like it's just like a transcript of every great tasting note, and like that's what I need in my life right now.
Yeah, just run like a loop of like people's like tasting and nosing notes. That'd be awesome.
Exactly.
Jason can work for the Food Network. I definitely could. Let's see here. Eric is making sure Scott's okay. Scott, you feeling okay? You're drinking malt or gas?
I'm okay. You know, it's kind of funny, and maybe I'm starting to like pick up like the differences of like peat versus like what the like a smoky or like a smoky malt. Like there's a difference now, and maybe I'm just really understanding that I really don't like peat that much. That more, I think maybe that's more of what it is than anything. To be honest.
Yeah. If this one wins, it's definitely going to be a T-Rex sticker somehow. I'm gonna put all of us in a little camping tent with a T-Rex just looming over.
I can tell you right now.
Well, clearly if it's gonna be a T-Rex, Matt's head's gonna have to be on it, like just covering over top of all of us.
Yeah. What were you gonna say, Will?
I'm saying right now, out of these two that we've tasted, this is not the winner.
No, yeah, I would agree. I would agree with Will. I mean,
yeah, I would still say. So Adam Dorman has a good question. Since you guys had these samples for a while ahead of time, so for me, I mean, I don't know if anyone cheated, but I am tasting these for the first time.
This is the first time for us. I am cheating in a way because I have a tasting sheet in front of me, right? Yeah. I have primers. I have things that, could be in there that I'm specifically looking for.
All right.
I don't do it that way.
But in that sense,
I use the form, but I circle it as I smell it. I don't look for those things.
Well, okay, that's fair.
But Scott, to your point about not liking peat but being okay with smoke, that's me. I don't like the iodine, rubber, medicinal, Band-Aid peat, but I like a good smoky whiskey, which this is what that is. It's just the smoke level.
Well, and that's a good point, because like I said to Jason one day, like I was out and I was drinking like a mezcal old fashioned, which was nice and smoky, and I liked it. I really liked it. And he was like, well, why do you like that? He's like, and I'm like, I don't know. I like this, but maybe it's just that peat and like what Sarah described.
I think it's the medicinal quality that you don't like.
And it's probably just that specific peat too. And I mean, you just have to try more to find out, but that's me. I'd love a smoky whiskey without that peat.
So, Chris, quick question from JR. Is Westland distributed in the East Coast right now, or no, not yet?
Westland is available in just about all 50 states and 15 countries around the world. Yeah, for sure.
Wow. Nice.
If JR wants to send me a note, Chris@westlanddistillery.com, I'm sure we can send him to a local shop.
Get
You can
some.
also, and I'm going to make the absolute shameless plug because I can't even help myself. You can also get our whiskey shipped nearly nationwide on westlanddistillery.com/shop.
Yeah,
That's huge. That's huge.
yeah. That's your westlanddistillery.shop, and you can get your online bottle for the low price of $89.99. It's insane.
I literally can't help myself. It's a sickness.
That's okay.
You get a Westland. You get a Westland.
Yeah.
I want to touch on that peat thing, though, because I think this is such an interesting thing. And it's always fun to, admittedly, we're really trying to open our sort of mindset as well. You know, I'll be the person to admit, my classic consumer, when I think of Westland, they're single malt drinkers, right? But the reality is that the American whiskey drinker should be experiencing what American single malt can offer. Listen, I can't promise they're going to love everything that every single malt maker makes, but I think the reality is I think we make a really compelling product, and there's enough, I would say, enough of an oak backbone to a majority of our whiskeys that I think your classic bourbon rye drinker will find something in there that they like. And we've got to the point that the Crusaders team was making, like we make whiskeys that have a distinct house profile, which I like whiskeys where I can go, oh man, that is classic X. Like that is exactly the whiskey that those people make. And I think that's really important. But when it comes to peat, one of the things that, you know, consumers should be doing is you should expect more from your distilleries. I will say that as a guy that's worked at distilleries now for, you know, going on 11 years, and you have every right to ask more questions and ask more pointed questions. So, you know, when you go to a tasting and you ask the producer, like, is this peated? If they give you a yes or no answer, that's not enough. The reality is, like, you need to know where is the peat from. And I'm not saying you need to know the exact bog. You need to know, like, is this mainland peat? Is this coming from Baird's? Is it coming from a maltster out on the islands? Like, is there peat being sourced from the islands? Because if it is, you know, the expectation is that it should have more of that sulfuric medicinal quality. Where we pull our peated barley from, and this will be really noticeable in 6061, is that, you know, that peated barley for Baird's is coming from the mainland. It's not from the islands or the coastline. You're not going to get a lot of that saline-driven plant life, so it's a very different aromatic compound. You know, it's when you've got those things that are more, you know, cedar, smoke, and pencil shavings, those kind of things. I tend to really like that. I also really like the medicinal sulfuric stuff, but there's a time and place for each of those. But I find it fascinating. The bourbon consumer has been preconditioned to ask every tough question. And in single malt, it's a much different game where it's just sort of like tell us the region you're about, when actually a lot of the cool technical things that a distillery does, you know, our barrel entry proofs or where we source our barrels from, where the barley comes from, those things are critical components to flavor development.
All right. So
Yeah.
real quick, guys, I do want to remind the chat that Scott and I, we released our Ezra and Ezra Brook cast strength picks this week. So if you guys want to, I think we've kind of gone through all the patrons to grab those. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop the links in the chat if anyone's interested in our Bougie Nights Ezra. The Ezra pick is called the Chocolate Blazer because it's like a Mexican hot chocolate.
Yeah.
And the Rebel, we call it the Peanut Buster because it's like drinking a spicy peanut butter cup.
Yeah.
So I'm going to drop the links for the Rebel and the Ezra in the chat in case anyone wants to. There's not that many left, so I figured I'll open it up to you guys, to the viewers, if you're interested in grabbing one. They are through sharedpour.com, so if you guys want to grab one, then go for it. I'm going to drop. If you buy both, you will get a discount on one of the bottles, but you have to click both links to get the discount. So. Yeah. Have at it, guys, if you want it. It's a decent price. I think they're about $54 each. You get both for about $100 for 2 bottles with the discount. So,
yeah, quite a few of them went on day one too. So
yeah, we don't have.
Says they are fire.
Yeah, we don't have many left. So, yeah, Ethan Turk says they're fire. Those picks are fire. We're in them already.
They already got to try them. They got to try them ahead of time when they were here. So
yeah, the Chocolate Blazer is coming to me soon. So the Chocolate Blazer is the one that was selling better than the Peanut Butter. I think people are really interested in that one. So if you guys really want to try that one, that's the one that's probably the least available. That's getting low. So if you guys want to try the Chocolate Blazer, check it out. The tasting notes are on the website that me and Scott pulled out. So there you go. All right, so to the 6061. So this is beautiful. Jack Daniel's Maplewood cask that was Was that the full maturation or just a finishing?
It was a finishing. So this did
Okay.
4 years and 4 months in an ISC Cooper's Reserve again, actually. And then it did its sort of last, would have been 3.5-ish years. 2.5-ish years, in that Jack Daniel's X Maplewood. So not maple syrup, but literally maple wood.
The Maplewood, yeah.
Yeah,
So
can you talk a little? Yeah, can you talk a little bit more about like the maple wood, like what that influence kind of does, like what the?
Yeah, I can tell you from a financial perspective, it means that you lose a lot of whiskey as leaky. Yeah. So the outturn on this is crazy low. So for, obviously standard 53 for single malt, you're looking at typically anywhere from like 190 to 220 bottles, like in that neck of the woods is pretty consistent for us. The outturn on this was like 84 bottles. It's crazy small. Maple lacks a lot of the tyloses that white American oak has. So tyloses is the chemical component that actually keeps wood watertight. So it's the thing that like allows you to put whiskey in a barrel and not have it just leak through the thing almost immediately. So there's obviously quite a bit less of that in maple, and you get these barrels. We had a couple of these come up this year, and all of the fills were incredibly low when we pulled these. Like the weights were like, they were like, no, that's got to be wrong. And it's like, oh no, someone can almost move this barrel on its own. It's like, that's not a good sign typically. So yeah, only 84 bottles on this, really, really low one. But maple produces a really interesting flavor. And what's probably sort of really specific here is that this is 100% peated recipe. So if you were to buy a bottle of our standard Westland peated, part of our core expressions, that is only a portion of those barrels are peated. So it's not 100% peated whiskey. Like for the sake of averages, we'll say a typical vatting of peated for us is like 30 barrels. I want to say a little less than 10 of them would actually contain peated spirit. So it's much lighter. The barrels that this type of a barrel would be more akin to what we do for Peat Week, which is 100% peated. So it's going to be much more noticeably so peated. It's all Baird's. Typical run for them is about 55 part per million, but this is inland peat. So it's not going to be that massive sulfuric iodine, Band-Aid kind of thing. This is way more on the line of like barbecue smoke. There's a much more like a chips and pencils.
This is definitely a softer peat, but I'm still getting a little. There's a slight medicinal note to it.
I'm gonna step aside and let the experts take over.
There is a medicinal to it.
Yeah.
I 100% agree. I get the campfire. I get the rubber, and I get the iodine and Band-Aids on it, but it is to the point. As Jason said, it's very light. It's still not my thing, but it's a lot more tolerable than, your high peat Ardbegs, whatever.
I think what's interesting about this, and Will alluded to this earlier, that I still feel like the Westland backbone is in this, even though there's like that there's a little bit of a peated overlay to it. Matt, what are you thinking on this one?
Okay, so this is you're at Chili's. You got those ribs there, those baby back ribs. You got barbecue sauce all over them.
Yeah, I thought this was more of an Applebee's type of thing, but whatever.
It's some riblets.
Chili.
Yeah, this is some really nice smoked ribs. This smells wonderful.
Yeah, it's smoky, meaty, and it's got that maple thing going on to it. But
I love maple syrup barrels. They're so delicious.
I have a hard time getting past the medicinal.
Yeah,
guys, just so everybody watching, it's not maple syrup barrels. It's maple wood.
Maple wood.
Right. Not maple
barrels
syrup.
made out of a maple tree.
Yeah.
Barrel from a maple tree. So if you guys have ever been into a store, like you see them a good amount. Jack Daniel's has a special gold box. That's their maple edition. So it's Jack Daniel's aged in a maple wood cask. That's what Westland did. They took those casks and they threw some of their whiskey into those casks for a finish. And obviously they were pretty leaky, and Chris is still kind of bitter about it, apparently.
It's almost like
we're definitely not making money on this cask, to be clear.
It's almost like they took that cask apart and smoked some bacon with it.
We should charge extra for that.
I'm getting more of a forest floor.
Does have a lot of
mushroom funk. To me, it goes down to those types of peaty lines, kind of like what is it, Peat Monster?
Yes.
It kind of goes down to that level of peat to me, where it's not crazy amounts of peat like the name suggests it could be, but it's in there.
Hey, Aunt Jemima made these bottles. It makes it better.
If this was an Aunt Jemima finish, this would be an
totally
automatic buy. I don't care what anybody says.
Seriously.
Oh my god.
That's awesome.
That's right.
Too bad
We're definitely going to hear from an attorney for this video. There's no doubt about it.
It'll be like immediately taken down by Westland. They're gonna want nothing to do with this.
Yeah.
Scott, I want to hear what you think.
Oh
Yeah.
man, I this is not my thing. Like I'm so locked into like that. Like
Scott, honestly, Scott, have you taken a sip of this one?
I've not tried it yet. No.
I even did it. Come on, I did it.
Yeah, just
You can
basic
handle
because
it. If you can handle it, you can handle it.
because the
amazing.
number one and number two, even though different, still have that chocolatey backbone to it. I'm wondering if Scott gets that.
It does. Here's one thing I would say. I think there's, for me, there almost seems to be more of that peaty note on the nose than there is the palate.
I totally agree.
And it is more like smoky, like a little like briny.
The brine.
Yeah,
It's got a brine finish.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that like kind of brininess to it. It's like, I mean, I don't know how to like qualify like whether or not it's like it's good. I mean, this is not my wheelhouse. So for me to like even try to say like who will appreciate this, I just don't
Meat
know
lovers.
because
Yeah, Matt. Overall, what are you thinking about this one?
That reminds me so much of Spring 44. Like the nose is not heavily peated, but man, you get in this palate. It's this beautiful, NASCAR series, gasoline, oil, burning tires. It's beautiful. I love this. This is so freaking good. Oh my god.
Yeah.
This is our love language, by the way.
I'm going back to number one.
Yeah, like for me, like oh my god, I'm loving this, all of it.
It's so good.
That's good. I'm happy.
It's really good.
I want to point out you picked up a really cool thing, Scott. I think it is that you were saying how you noticed that it was less noticeable on the palate, but more in the aromatics. Yeah. I can tell you there's actually a very specific reason why that's the case. So because this spent the first chunk of its life in that virgin American oak, that air-dried new white oak, what you're happening is you're getting a lot more of that oak lactone wood sugar. So it's literally negating the impact of the phenolics on the palate. So you've got enough sort of fatty, sugary kind of things going on there to balance that out. Whereas it can't do that on the aromatic. So if the sort of antithesis to this would be like if you had something in an ex-bourbon barrel. So ex-bourbon tends to be, you don't pick up a ton of it on the nose, but when you taste it on the palate, it's like immensely peaty. You almost can't miss it because there's nothing to balance it out. So here, it's almost I always call these like they're a bit of like a chameleon whiskey because you're expecting one thing and tasting another a little bit.
I
just gotta say, go ahead, Jason.
No, go ahead, Sarah. Ladies first.
I went back to number one, and that reminds me so much of your sherry cask. I just the berries in there and the fig, and I just if they don't pick that one, I kind of want to.
See, so for me, so judging by what we're tasting here, I think 5699, although it's very unique, I don't really think that was my favorite. The number 901 and 6061 stand out. Unfortunately, 6061 only has 84 bottles, which is rough.
Yeah.
But I mean, if someone picks that cask or someone doesn't pick it, I want bottles of that.
Yeah, we'll take that.
Wherever it goes, wherever it ends up. I am definitely leaning towards the 901 just because not only the proof, not only the complexity, the fruit, the chocolate, the tobacco, there's so many layers to it.
Yes. So much going on in the glass. And it's been sitting here just opening up as we went through the other ones, and it's just getting better and better as it opens up.
My goodness, it's so good.
You're going back to it now?
Yeah, I'm going back to it.
So that's my vote.
That's my vote too.
901.
901 is to me a clear winner here. I love peat. I'm a huge fan of peated whiskeys, but the complexity of what is going on with this single cask is out of this world.
Oh man, it's so much. It's so much like creamy peach cobbler, like nice pie crust.
Yeah, but it still has that other. It's like that. It's like maybe it's gonna be like a Star Wars sticker. It's got like got the light side and the dark side to it. It's got
It really does.
these bright peachy and like orchard, like fruit orchard notes, and then on the other side,
Red
dark
chocolate
leather.
coffee.
Maybe it could be like Luke kicking Darth Vader in the balls or something like that.
Yes.
But
Damn, where am I
in case a
going?
Disney attorney is listening to this, with the 3 points of differentiation, to be clear.
That's true. That's true. Yeah,
Sorry,
that's true.
guys, don't
That's
do
true.
this to me. Please don't.
That is-
please
Yeah,
don't
no Disney characters
Yeah,
allowed.
that's true. That is true. Yeah. That's true.
Okay.
So Matt, what do you think? So like my thing, I feel like Cask 901 will be like the biggest crowd play. A lot of people will love it, but I do have a special place in my heart for 6061.
Yeah. Mother, yeah. We'll talk about that.
Matt, why don't you and I just buy 6061 and we'll let Matt or we'll let Jason buy.
Or the other one we can't talk about. That one. I tried that one too here. Yeah, well, that's a different story.
Oh, the red wine one?
Good Lord.
Yeah, that's gone.
Is that not a ridiculous
That is the best
barrel?
one by far.
Yeah, somebody
It's
else
funny.
bought that one.
So we were getting off with Jay and the guys over at Whiskey Wednesday and obviously the Reddit team, and they were like getting through, and I was just like, listen, I remember like as we were wrapping up, I was like, guys, if you want the third one, you can have it, and they were just like it. I was like, let me know tomorrow. And like 8 minutes after we got off, there was like this immediate inbox where Blake was like, yeah, we want that third barrel. I was like, all right, you got it.
Yeah.
Why did you give it to him?
I honestly,
That's good.
I'll tell you. So I just hired a team of guys to work with us at Westland, and we were out in Seattle a couple of weeks ago, and we burned through these. I wanted to run them through it because it's good for sensory for guys to hear this, because especially now, you guys have tasting notes, and that's excellent. And those are the tasting notes that should matter because they're your palate. But we write up things like this, and 2418, 2423 were special. Those red wine casks, there was something going on there. Like those were interesting things. Obviously I don't have a say in this, nor should I, to be clear. 901 is a special barrel of whiskey. There is not a lot of that kind of stuff still around at Westland, to be clear. Like those, we just don't keep stuff that long. Typically we tend to find we call it profiling out. So obviously you get to a certain point where 5 malt starts to kind of low to drop a little bit. You get a little less of the chocolate and coffee thing going on, but some of these just really kept it. And I think in particular, had this been started, 901 had been started in virgin white oak, that even that air dry, what you would have found is that the oak probably would have overpowered some of those elements. But because it was second fill, because it had lost some of that vanilla and that wood sugar, some of those really kind of creamy notes, you actually were able to preserve a lot of that really cool 5 malt and get the nuanced version of this. It is much, much older for us.
Man.
Yeah,
You're not, admittedly, you're not going to see whiskey much older than that from us really ever. Like we're well at the point where we could put out 10-year-old whiskey if we want to, but it's just not part of what we think we want to do right now.
Yeah, so the fact that we're getting this is a tad over 8 years old. It's got so much complexity going on. It's really delicious.
It really does.
Matt, out of the 3Ds, what would be your pick?
Obviously I want the peated one because it's peat. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I could live with 901. I prefer the peat, or let's just buy them both and be done with it. Problem solved. The tequila one is out.
Well, I would love to offer like a peated one and the 901 to the viewers, but it's tough to gauge because obviously Scott and I are a little bit more bourbon forward on our channel, so it's tough to gauge the viewers if they would go for this peated version, if it would sell, because obviously our distributors are taking the risk on bringing the bottles in. We have to sell them.
So we got
you're running this through
198 bottles of 901. So.
Yeah,
you're running these through Cali. Is it
through Keg and Bottle?
Yeah,
I don't think it'd be a problem if we were to 84 of these, to be honest. Not with our group. I think we'd sell them pretty quick.
Well, if that's something we want to talk about, and Matt, you guys and your group want to be involved in if Chris is okay with it, if he's trying to move 60-61, and that's something we can do, and Matt, if you feel like you can move them along with maybe some of the people in our group, maybe that's something we can do. I don't know, Chris, that's something you'll have to talk about it.
As long as they can ship to Texas, that's our biggest issue is can they ship to Texas? If they can't ship to Texas, then it's going to be
Typically, Texas is a bit of no in, no out,
And-
so it's a pretty.
And that's going to be our problem right there. Is Texas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what he's saying to you, Matt, is no Pete for you. No Pete for you.
Fucking Texas.
Listen, I'm happy to. To be clear, you guys want 2 barrels. I'm more than happy to offer it. That listen, we want people that are excited about it. This is cool. This is the sort of community that we want to create around single malt as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just got to be something that works for you guys. But I think 901 is a special bottle of whiskey.
I agree.
It is. I agree.
I agree.
There's just so much going on, and I think this is one of those whiskeys. The longer it sits out, and the different palates that taste it are going to pick up just a whole. Like we're telling you what we're taste, but I feel like anybody that sits down with this is going to pick up some crazy flavors.
Yeah, it's almost like we have generic notes that are more complex, like generic notes. Like there's just a lot of these full, like bodied flavors that you're getting from 901.
All right, so Chris, for the Matching Journey Whiskey Club, we're definitely going to take 901. I think that's the choice by far.
Good.
We'll talk a little bit offline about 6061 and maybe what we can do with that one.
Well, it's true. Texas, I mean, if it moves to other states, it's probably not an issue. Texas is our problem.
Yeah.
We have stupid laws. Also, I want to say your caps are amazing. I wish all distillers would move to caps because corks are stupid. Because those are for stupid people.
So Westland. So if you guys don't know, Westland has screw caps.
Yes.
They're nice screw caps, though. They're not.
They're nice screw caps.
Yeah. Not
They're
that
nice,
bullshit.
thick plastic
else
that's
pulls.
going to hold up, and it's not going to fail. You know what
No.
I love about
I don't have
screw
to worry
caps?
about
They
Westland.
don't
It
fail.
will never leak.
It doesn't
Unless you,
leak.
don't put the
It
cap
doesn't
on.
break. It doesn't anything. It just
Exactly.
it's
Don't get
fail-proof.
mad off on the
They're
screw
lovely.
tops versus
No,
corks.
it's beautiful. He knows. He has an amazing product that has a screw top. Good whiskey should have a screw top. No more corks. Corks are stupid.
Okay.
And technology.
No, let's not get mad all fired.
And Grant, there's a video out there if you want to really
There
see
is.
it. Okay.
I hate them.
Yeah, there's a video from Matt about how much he hates corks, so you can check it out.
Yes.
I'm going to need the link for that.
Yeah,
That's good.
I'll send it
we'll
to you.
we'll get it to you, Chris. So all right. So I guess we'll wrap things up here because there's some other channels going live, including Bourbon Bites. Definitely go check out Cliff over at Bourbon Bites after this. I want to thank the Whiskey Crusaders for coming on and helping us pick this amazing American single malt we're going to have. And obviously, Chris, I really want to thank you for your time. Anything else you want to
Thank
say
you very much.
before we head out?
Yeah, I'll leave you with this. Westland is a grown-up distillery, but we're still a relatively small one. I still count every bottle that goes out of the distillery. I think of every barrel that goes to, and I can't tell you how much we appreciate when people bring our whiskeys into their collections. I see, just the 3 of you, 4 of you, and the backgrounds. Look, you guys have a ton of great whiskey, with you, and to know that Westland is something that you'd want to be kind of partnering with, that's a big deal for us. So we are appreciative. If anyone has any curiosities, wants to know more about Westland, I encourage you check out our website at westlanddistillery.com. You can check out our Instagram feed at Westland Whiskey or Facebook, which I think is Westland Distillery. But yeah, anything you need, I am an easy guy to get a hold of. I'm Chris at westlanddistillery.com. Not sure how many people want to give out their personal email addresses, but I love talking about whiskey, and I'm certainly really proud of the whiskey that we make at the distillery. So anything we can do to connect you with it, we're more than happy to do it.
All right, guys. Before you leave, if you want to get your hands on the this Westland pick, if this sounds delicious to you and you want to get your hands on it, you could join Patreon for a little $3 a month. Join Patreon for either me or on Scott's channel. And that will get you access to these amazing Westland picks up and coming. We got definitely 901 coming. We'll see about 6061 because I feel like I want a case of that shit. So we'll see what happens.
That's what I'm saying. Like between you, me, and Matt, I think we can sell that whole
I
product.
think we can do okay with them. So, all
All
right, guys, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks for joining the Matching Journey Whiskey Club. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight. Head on over to Cliff over at Bourbon Bites. And as I always say, it's not about the whiskey, it's the people you share it with. Subscribe to the Whiskey Crusaders, and we'll see you guys real soon. Take care, everybody.
Thanks for sharing. guys.
Cheers.
Everybody on the stream, stick around.
We know the drill.